I struggled at the bottom with Ashton for 5 years before finally paying off our debts. To celebrate, I specially went to a flower shop to buy flowers. However, I saw him spending lavishly and ordering the most expensive bouquet to give to another girl. A friend asked him, for 5 years, "How long are you going to pretend in front of Serafina?" He chuckled and dusted off his cigarette. "Meeting an equal opponent, I want to see how long she can pretend to be poor. She wants to test me, so I'll play along with her." Pretending to be poor? But I'm not pretending. I'm really poor. Hidden by the flower shelf, they didn't see me. The man standing beside Ashton, I've also seen him. His name is Arya. When Ashton introduced us, he said that he, like me, was also from a poor family. At that time, Arya was simply dressed. His shoes were so worn out that they were turning white. His expression was so awkward, as if he had never talked to a girl before. But now, Arya is wearing expensive trendy brands and has a cynical look. "Hey, let me see her again someday," Arya said. "I have an acting itch and want to find some fun." "Has she never suspected me?" Ashton snorted. "What could she suspect? Isn't she also acting? Does she know what a real poor person is like? But it's been 5 years. Isn't she mentally ill? Is pretending to be poor so interesting?" "It's very interesting. She loves me as a person, but she's even more afraid that this poor boy of mine will be after her money. She doesn't dare to reveal her identity, making herself live and eat poorly. She really deserves it. I'm almost laughing to death in my heart when I see it. But there should be an end to this. The daughter of the Isabella family is still waiting to marry you through an alliance." "Ah, wait, you won't have fallen in love with Serafina and want to break off the engagement, will you?" "Of course not. Isabella knows about my relationship with Serafina. She's also watching the fun." Ashton shook his head slightly. "But the problem is that Serafina won't admit defeat. I don't have a good time to reveal it. If not handled properly, I'll change from the victim to a deliberate opponent. Then I won't be on the moral high ground. To be honest, except for the money issue, she's really good to me." As they were talking, 2 clerks carefully carried over something in the shape of a 3-layer cake decorated with roses. My eyes widened instantly. Those 3 layers that echoed the color of roses were not cakes but neatly rolled and stacked renminbi. So much brand new money piled up layer upon layer gave me a big shock. But Ashton only glanced at it indifferently. "Send it away." And just yesterday, he was still pitifully wearing shoes with split soles. When I suggested buying a new pair, he shook his head repeatedly and said they could still be worn. Saving money was important. At night, I carefully checked the ledger. At 2 in the morning, under the dim desk lamp, I finally confirmed that after 5 years of hardship, we finally paid off our student loans and other debts. From now on, we can work hard for our own happy life. We finally climbed out of the quagmire. I held back my excitement and planned to officially tell Ashton this good news today. I just bought him a new pair of shoes for 270 yuan. I know this is nothing for others, but all the clothes Ashton and I have together don't add up to 260 yuan. This is a qualitative leap. I've even thought about it. He will definitely be shocked and ask me to return them. And I will tell him, wear them boldly. This is just a beginning. We will get better and better. We deserve a good life. On the way back, I saw this exquisite and bright flower shop and decided to be extravagant. With the 30 yuan in change, I would buy a bouquet of roses. I nervously stepped into the store, calculating that it would be good to buy 1 flower or 2. In the past, even when we gave gifts to each other, they were always practical. We never dared to waste a penny on something flashy. But today is different. It's worth celebrating and worth wasting. Now, I'm just thinking that 300 yuan bills, rolled up, can't even fill the corner under the flower branch. They walked out. I quickly turned sideways and faced away. Arya asked Ashton, "What are you going to do later?" "Golf or. There's a new rock climbing gym opened in my dad's shopping mall. Shall we go and take a look?" Back in the rental house, I packed my luggage for a while and then stopped. The tear stains dried on my face. My pounding heart also calmed down. I regained my calm. The situation suddenly exceeded my understanding. Being slandered, deceived, and betrayed. I have to hear what he has to say. Ashton didn't come home until very late. As soon as he entered the door, he turned into the toilet. After a long while, he came out and waved at me. The toilet is clogged again. Come and unclog it quickly. Seeing that I was standing still, he was a bit surprised. When you were a cleaner, you were very good at this. Why, are you rusty? I only worked in my first job after graduation for 2 months when the company had a major layoff. When it rains, it pours. Ashton's grandfather fell and injured his waist in his hometown and urgently needed money for medical treatment. Otherwise, he would face the risk of paralysis. Ashton was at a loss and hugged me and cried, saying that if it didn't work, he would sell blood. I gritted my teeth, took out all my savings, and told him to cheer up and save his grandfather first. People like us have endured all kinds of hardships. If we have to say what poverty has taught us, it's only perseverance. Hold on, endure, and survive. We have been able to get through every difficult time before, so don't be afraid this time either. I wiped away his tears and started to pack his luggage for him. During the days when he was back in his hometown, I sent out resumes everywhere and kept attending interviews. It was not easy to find a new job, and rent, utilities, and everything cost money. When I learned that the original company had a cleaner who had left and was recruiting, I applied without hesitation. During that transitional period, I worked as a cleaner during the day. Under the strange gazes of my former colleagues, I scrubbed toilets wholeheartedly. At night, I worked as a part-time clerk at a 24-hour convenience store. This job was relatively familiar to me. When I was in college, I always did it during holidays. After Ashton returned from his hometown, he also lost his job because his long personal leave exceeded the company's regulations. I comforted him, saying that at least Grandpa had recovered his health, so we didn't lose out. That night, the toilet in the rental house was clogged. Ashton spent a long time but still couldn't unclog it. He was about to call someone to deal with it but hesitated because of the cost. It said online that they will raise the price on the spot. It often costs a few hundred yuan. How much is our toilet? Alas. I put down the resume I was revising and jumped up, full of energy. Finally, it's time for me to show my skills. After saying that, I pushed him aside and rushed into the toilet. The cleaning aunt at the company taught me some tricks, all of which have been tested in practice. 5 minutes later, I opened the toilet door and pressed the flush button. Accompanied by the sound of smooth flowing water, I raised my arm high, my fingertips drew an elegant arc, then placed it on my chest, and gently bent down to take a bow. My only audience burst into loud applause and cheers. He hugged me and spun around in the small room. Serafina, how could I live without you? Fool, anyone in this world can live without anyone else. Just as I lost my parents since I was a child, I still grew up to be this old. Not only did I finish college, but I also have a boyfriend who is equally hardworking and motivated. We have this small rented home in the urban village. At that time, I believed that although fate was cruel to me, it didn't push me to the end. I could almost see the day when there would be a bright future. So, none of my present days were gloomy. Looking at Ashton in his worn-out t-shirt and jeans, for a moment I even doubted if what I saw in the flower shop was an illusion. Ashton, have you ever deceived me? He was a bit stunned. Our relationship has always been very good. We trust and support each other. I have never doubted him nor tested him. Serafina, what do you mean by that? He came over and looked into my eyes. Then have you deceived me? No. It was as if a stone had fallen from his heart. He smiled. Then of course I haven't either. But I couldn't smile. I am a poor person, a thorough poor person. When I was a child, I lived under someone else's roof. When I grew up, I depended entirely on myself. Every penny is hard-earned for me. I looked directly at him. I am not ashamed of this. I didn't deliberately exaggerate to gain sympathy. We have been together for 5 years. There have been so many moments when we were overwhelmed by poverty and so many regrets. My throat was a bit choked. After taking a deep breath, I said slowly, "Today, speaking from the bottom of my heart, I haven't deceived you. Please tell me, have you been dishonest with me?" He looked at me inquiringly, as if trying to dig out my heart from my eyes. His phone vibrated and he looked down at the message. From my angle, I couldn't see his screen clearly, but the alluring and heartbreaking pink of the renminbi on the clicked picture was so easy to recognize. He quickly replied a few words, with a hint of a smile on his face unconsciously. Looking up again and seeing that I still had a solemn expression, he frowned and put his arms around me. He stroked my face with his rough palm and then immediately took it away. "Sorry, look at how rough my hands are. Today I got a loading and unloading job. I ran 2 trips and got 50 yuan. After failing to find a job, he simply started doing odd jobs, most of which required physical labor. I was therefore extremely distressed and had secretly cried several times. I held his hands. It seemed that he had a great time playing in the rock climbing gym. He took his hand back. "It's okay, Serafina. For you, I am willing to endure any hardship." He comforted me as usual. He didn't answer my question, but I got the answer. This was the last answer I needed from him. When he was clumsily stir-frying shredded potatoes on the induction cooker propped up on the balcony, I had already packed my luggage. This house doesn't have a kitchen. If you want to cook, you can only go to the balcony. Before cooking, you need to take back the clothes that are drying. Looking at the clothes on the clothes drying pole that he had ignored, I suddenly realized that many times when I was cooking, he also seemed to be busy before and after, but in fact, he had never taken it seriously. He was like participating in some stage play, lively and seemingly engaged, but in his heart, he also felt that it was just a performance. Who set up this stage? And how did he put on the costume so surely? There were too many questions. I didn't have the energy to ask. All I could do was use all my strength to leave here first. I stuffed all my things into a woven bag. That was all. I originally thought that the next time we moved, it must be to a better place. We must pack our luggage full of joy. Unexpectedly, it was like this. "Let's break up," I said. He waved the spatula. When he heard me speak but didn't hear clearly, he only saw something beside my feet. "Going to throw out the trash? Don't forget to buy some toilet paper back," he said. I turned around. Smelling the burnt smell wafting over, "Tonight no one will praise your pretend cooking skills against their will." Half an hour later, I received a call from Ashton. "Where did you go?" "I urgently need toilet paper." "Ashton, let's break up. I don't know why you did this, and it doesn't matter anymore. Even if I'm unlucky. I have always been honest. I loved you. I loved you until this morning. But it turns out that I am just a prop for your amusement. Then I inform you that I take back my love. From now on, you can enjoy your affluent life to your heart's content. I hope you can find other pleasures." There was silence on the other end for a while, and then came laughter. "What's wrong, Serafina? Are you giving up just like this? I thought you would end it splendidly. Is this it?" "Serafina, it's been 5 years. Is it just going to end so hastily? Are you sure?" I stood at the door of the convenience store where I work part-time and saw my boss, Penelope, getting off the car from a distance. "Ashton, to be honest, I only half understand what you're saying. But my time is precious. I don't have the time to waste on your nagging. You deceived me and betrayed me. So I'm breaking up with you. That's how it is. How can you have the nerve to talk about deception? You are the biggest liar. Don't think you've covered your tracks perfectly. I just didn't bother to expose you." Ashton was still babbling on. I knew he didn't believe me. Seeing Penelope approaching, I hung up the phone. My first part-time job in college was at Penelope's store. Later, I came back intermittently and got familiar with her. I explained my intention. Since I just cleared my debts and my savings are back to zero, I hoped Penelope could advance me some salary. I would repay it by working later. After listening, Penelope stubbed out her cigarette and had a half-smile. "Suddenly discovering that your boyfriend of 5 years is from a wealthy family. How many people dream of encountering such a thing? Tell me the truth. Are you just putting on an act and we'll get back together with him in a few days? Sister, I'm not joking. I'm breaking up for real. At my age, I no longer expect perfect relationships. Although he deceived you, I don't believe he has no true feelings for you. When you work the night shift, he comes to pick you up without fail. Not only without fail, in the heavy snow the year before last, he fell on the road with his car. The car was damaged and he was also injured. But still, he limped and pushed the car to the store entrance. I ran out and saw a snowman smiling at me. At that moment, I was simply terrified by my own happiness. But looking back now, if it weren't for repaying our student loans, if it weren't for his family members falling sick frequently, if it weren't for him constantly causing trouble at work and needing me to clean up after him, why would I have to do a part-time job on a snowy day after a whole day's work? With his family background, all those loans and sicknesses are just acts he put on. Seeing my heartbroken look, Penelope patted my shoulder. Of course, sister supports any choice you make. I've also seen the hardships you've endured these years. Tell me how much you need. Consider it as a loan from me. Don't come to work anymore. Plan well for your future. I was still lost in memories when I suddenly realized a problem. Wait, sister. I might not need to borrow. I'm going to get back the money I was cheated out of. I leaned on the cashier counter and quickly calculated the money Ashton had taken from me for various reasons. When I gave it to him at the beginning, it was naturally willingly. But if it was taken by him through deception, it's a different story. Emotions can be cut off cleanly, but as a proper poor person, I can't suffer losses in money. I sent the list to Ashton, and a red exclamation mark appeared. When I called him, I found he had blocked me. Liar. This is definitely a liar. I slapped the table and stood up. I suspect if his family fortune was all obtained through cheating like this. I looked for him for several days but couldn't find even a trace of him. After all the social relationships he told me were false. The construction site where he claimed to carry heavy loads. The company where he said he was fired. The relatives who he said treated him coldly. All false. When we met, I was a senior in college. He had already started working and claimed to be a senior from the neighboring school 2 years above me. He was warm and considerate. He was open about his poor situation. When talking about his bumpy growth experience, he was more optimistic and resigned. Perhaps it was his spirit that infected and attracted me. But there was no such person in the neighboring school. Those friends he took me to meet were also liars like Arya who came to play role-playing for fun. Once I thought we were duckweeds in this world relying on each other and closely intertwined. But from beginning to end, there was only me. In a heavy rain, I rushed through the rain curtain and ran towards the bus. Suddenly, a small black thing on the platform moved. It was a little kitten. Its whole body was soaked by the rain. Its eyes were half open and it made a weak cry. My heart tightened. I remembered the kitten I picked up in the year after graduation. I named it Chunbao. When I first brought it home, it was just this small. Of course, a year later, it had become a clingy chubby baby. If it weren't for that car accident, I couldn't bear to think about it anymore. Tears blurred my vision. The last bus slowly drove away. I held the kitten and found a pet hospital that was still open. When I opened the door and went in, 2 elaborately dressed girls were arguing with the doctor about something. I stood in line behind and got the general idea. It seemed that the little dog of one of the girls had been in a bad mental state after treatment. She suspected it hadn't been cured. Doctor, use the best medicine and the best nutritional supplements. Look, it's not lively anymore. The girl's tone was tough. The doctor then stopped explaining and hung a nutritional drip for the little dog. When it was my turn, the doctor took the kitten into the inner room for examination. As I followed and stepped in, I suddenly heard the voice of another girl. Isabella, can you set the wedding date with Ashton? Isabella is exactly the name of the daughter of the Isabella family who has an engagement with Ashton as mentioned by Arya. I couldn't help but look back. Isabella stroked the little dog beside her. Soon, I guess. Since he and that drama queen have already broken up. He's finally had enough fun. I was really afraid they would keep entangle oneself further. I thought you didn't mind. At first, I really didn't mind. Ashton didn't spend money on her either. It was just a matter of spending some time. Anyway, our two families have an arranged marriage. He will marry me sooner or later. But who could have thought that later when I asked him to come out and play, he kept making excuses. As soon as I asked, he said he didn't want to lose. I had originally planned that if it was still like this by the end of the year, I would personally go and expose everything to that drama queen. Serafina's family is a wealthy one. Even if their business is all abroad, her parents shouldn't have left their daughter in the country by herself. Look, she's so idle. She's even become addicted to living a hard life. I think she's already mentally abnormal, Isabella sneered twice. Did I tell you? 2 years ago, she raised a cat and cherished it like nothing else. Later, it was hit by a car. In fact, if it had been operated on in time, it could have been saved. But she insisted that she had no money and wouldn't pay even 20,000 yuan. She cried and asked Ashton to think of a way with her. In the end, it was delayed. Is this still a human being? If my baby was injured, let alone 20,000 yuan, I wouldn't blink even for 200,000 yuan. Ah, that's so terrible. I listened in a daze, my heart shrinking into a ball. My Chunbao. I remember begging the doctor desperately at that time. The doctor said it could be rescued, but the chance of success was not high and the cost was very high. Even so, I didn't want to give up. I opened my address book and didn't know who to borrow money from. 3 months before the incident, Ashton's mother fell ill. I had already borrowed money once and hadn't fully repaid everyone yet. Ashton saw this and comforted me while calling his friends to borrow money. In the end, he only managed to gather more than 3,000 yuan. Chunbao slowly closed its eyes in my arms. I couldn't stop crying. And he even cried more bitterly than me. Sorry, it's my uselessness. So I could only wipe away my tears and comfort him. After that, whenever I suddenly thought of Chunbao, I would always hide and cry secretly as soon as possible. I was afraid that he would see it. I was afraid that his dignity would be worn down by the reality of being unable to give me a good life. The cruel truth made me unable to breathe. Serafina. Why are you here? A familiar voice came from the door. Ashton stared intently. Ashton, Isabella picked up the dog from her lap and stood up. Caught in the rain? Your hair is all wet. He ignored her and strode up to me. You finally showed up after disappearing for a few days. Tell me, how are you going to play next? There was burning anger in his eyes, but the corners of his mouth trembled and rose. Chunbao. I uttered with difficulty. You had the money to save it back then, right? You could have saved it, right? But you chose to watch it die in my arms. How could you be so cruel? When Ashton heard Chunbao's name, he guiltily shifted his gaze. Why bring this up now? After all, it was just a sacrifice in our game. I admit that I didn't admit defeat and save it at the last moment. He pursed his lips. But neither did you. What right do you have to accuse me? Game? Sacrifice? I looked up, took a deep breath and exhaled. If you're sick, go see a doctor as soon as possible. Isabella pointed at me. You are Serafina, right? Who are you saying is sick? Why are you biting back? Ashton pressed down her arm and said to me, since we've come to this point, then let's make it even clearer. Yes, I am responsible for Chunbao's matter. But you bear greater responsibility. You used it to force me. You forced me to be cruel. Don't you remember? A few months before Chunbao had an accident, I told you that my mother was sick and urgently needed money. What did you do? You hesitated for several days and only took out so little money. Fortunately, that was made up by me. Otherwise, wouldn't you also watch my mother be critically ill without admitting defeat? Who is more excessive between us? I closed my eyes in pain and shook my head. When you said your mother was sick, I tried my best to. Try your best? What effort do you need to make? Ashton raised his wrist and showed the watch. That was the 5th anniversary gift I gave him at the beginning of this year. Serafina, don't be stubborn. I've said before that you are not without flaws. On our 5th anniversary, I said I would give you a family heirloom bracelet. You took out this watch. Although it's only worth more than 1,000 yuan, but you keep saying that we have to pay off debts and we have no savings. Where did this more than 1,000 yuan come from? You are really shrewd. You saw at a glance how much I bought that bracelet for and immediately took out something of equal value. Serafina, you are good in everything else. But when it comes to money, you are too calculating. That's right. Miser. Isabella chimed in. Sure enough, it's still not good without parental guidance. After saying that, she turned her head and touched Ashton's wrist. Ashton, why don't you wear the Vacheron Constantine I gave you? Why are you wearing this junk? She took off the watch and threw it at me. Ashton was too late to react and reached out too late. The watch hit the ground and the dial was broken. I picked it up, took off the bracelet on my wrist, and stuffed it to him. Take me out of the blacklist. I have something to send you. He was surprised. When did I? Isabella shook his arm, and he understood. Silently, he tapped on his phone a few times. I sent the listed list. These are our respective expenditures in recent years. Fortunately, I keep accounts regularly. Forget about other things. The money you cheated from me by lying is all marked in red. Take a look. If there's no problem, transfer the money. The two of them put their heads together in front of the screen and looked at it for a while, then laughed simultaneously. Isabella, this time I really see it. Someone is so neurotic that they even keep accounts for 3 or 5 yuan. Ashton, it's really a pity for you to waste time with such a person. Ashton, so you really keep accounts seriously. Why, does your father want you to be an accountant in the company? Here it comes again. What company? What nonsense. Madam, the examination is done. The kitten is a bit malnourished. There are no other problems, said the doctor. I took the cat, he will pay the fee. After saying that, I brushed past him and walked out. Deduct it from what you owe me. Serafina, stop. He turned and shouted. I ignored him and rushed into the rain. Serafina, if you just leave like this, I won't pay back the money. The heavy rain made his voice somewhat shrill. Then wait for the police to come to your door. I protected the kitten in my coat and ran wildly. 07 Back at Penelope's store, I dried myself off, settled the kitten in a cardboard box and fed it some milk. Then I quickly put on an apron and relieved the clerk on duty. Serafina? A customer walked up to the cashier counter and called my name hesitantly. I looked up, was stunned for a moment, and then exclaimed in surprise, Lilith. Lilith was the youngest in my college dormitory. She was cute, but her personality had always been rather cold, polite yet distant. In school, she didn't have much interaction with anyone. After graduation, she completely disappeared without a trace. The only extra interaction I had with her was when her family asked her to go on a blind date, but she was extremely reluctant. Coincidentally, I was the only one in the dormitory that day, so she asked me to go in her place. I had a delicious meal at a luxury hotel. According to her instructions, I put on her clothes and bag and behaved coldly throughout. Naturally, there was no follow-up to the blind date. After this little episode, I was still busy working part-time to earn money for my studies every day, and she was still aloof. I heard people say you went abroad. I thought I'd never see you again, I said. She smiled. I still can't get used to it over there. So, I'm back. Then we can get together often when we have time. I was being polite while being busy checking out. She looked at me and asked bluntly, why are you doing this? It's a long story, I shrugged. But the good news is that I've paid off my student loan. She nodded and asked again, are you still with your boyfriend? Have you got married? After checking out the next customer and watching them leave, I said, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I just found out that he is a rich second generation. He pretended to be poor for 5 years. And he even said that I deceived him. The main thing is that he still owes me money. It's a headache. Are there such strange rich second generations in Cheeching? 08 That night, Lilith added me on WeChat with another account. Clicking into her moments, I was immediately shocked by the exquisite and luxurious life she led. In school, although I could sense that her family was well off, it seemed to be just an ordinary level of wealth. I never expected it to be to the extent of buying luxury goods like cabbages. She explained that because her parents had been abroad all year round and left her alone in China living with her aunt. For safety reasons, she was not allowed to expose family information. But now it's different. They are going to return to China to develop. Lilith said that her parents would hold a banquet on the weekend and all the celebrities in Chiching would be present. She also specially invited Ashton. In her words, in such a scene, if he still refuses to pay back the money, he will lose all face. So I also got an invitation. The night before the banquet, I received a message from Ashton. I will definitely be there without an invitation. I haven't seen you looking all resplendent with jewels and fine clothes for a long time. In fact, that kind of dressing is more suitable for you. Pay back the money. Otherwise, don't blame me if it's an embarrassing scene then. Heh. See you tomorrow. The next day, I arrived at the banquet hall on time and was chatting with Lilith in a corner. A man came up to us holding a wine glass. Long time no see, he said to me. This person looked a bit familiar, but I couldn't remember for a moment. Who are you? I flew back from Australia especially to see you. After being heartbroken by you, I went back overnight. I reflected for a long time. Was I too noisy and annoying? Was my speech too frivolous? I tossed and turned for a long time and couldn't sleep well. After deeply regretting and making a fresh start, and you actually forgot me. It was the person I went on a blind date instead. It seemed to be called Ethan. I was at a loss and looked at Lilith. She chuckled. Will he be heartbroken again when he goes back this time? After explaining clearly what happened back then, seeing that Lilith was not repugnance him, I silently stepped back to give them some space. But then I saw him suddenly wave his hand. Ashton, you're here too? Ashton saw me standing nearby and replied knowingly, what? Failed in the blind date and making a comeback? Your mouth is still so mean. Ethan turned to explain to Lilith. Back at the restaurant for the blind date, I met him too. I said I was going on a blind date with the daughter of the Serafina family. I was so nervous that I didn't know what to say. He even helped me come up with many topics. In the end, the blind date failed and he made fun of me. Ashton came over. Before he even stood still, he heard Lilith's sarcastic tone. Young master of the Ashton family, pay back the money. Ethan, seeing this, didn't ask more and immediately helped demand the debt. Debts must be repaid. It's only right and proper. Ashton looked around speechlessly. Finally, his gaze fell on my face. Is this fun? Our matter can be discussed privately. Today is the day when your family officially introduces you to everyone. Don't think about other things. As soon as these words came out, the three of us were stunned. Ethan stepped forward and turned his head. Brother, who are you talking to? Are you squinting? Lilith raised her hand. Wait, I seem to know what's going on. I met her gaze. I seem to know too. Ashton, I said. The time I went on a blind date with him was the first time you saw me, right? I'm not the daughter of the Serafina family. She is. I went in her place. Ethan realized belatedly and shook Ashton's shoulder. Oh my God. I was abroad these years, but you are in Chiching. How are you still in the dark? Ashton's expression changed slightly, but he still said calmly to me, is it fun to play this joke in collusion with them? Serafina, now that we both know what's going on, let's talk openly and honestly. We both made mistakes. Call it even and start over. Isn't it good? Cut the crap. Pay back the money. I said. Yes, pay back the money first. Lilith said. Pay back the money. Pay back the money. Ethan said. There was a harsh buzzing sound from the speaker. We looked towards the stage. 09 on the occasion of Serafina's return to the country. Thank you all for gracing this banquet. Let's raise our glasses for friendship, cooperation, and the future. After the applause subsided, Lilith's father continued, since all our friends are gathered here today, let my daughter officially make an appearance. In the future, we will inevitably have frequent business dealings. I hope everyone will take care of her. Ashton turned his head and stared at me, eagerly awaiting. The applause in the hall made a trace of panic flash in his eyes. He looked back at the stage and saw that Lilith had already taken the microphone. When he looked at me again, his eyes were wide open. He opened his mouth to say something. I reached out and made a sh sound, indicating that he should not affect Lilith's speech. I knew that he hadn't heard a single word of the speech resounding through the hall. He just stared at me, shaking his head continuously. His breathing became heavier and heavier, and his chest heaved violently. At the end of the speech on the stage, Lilith changed the topic. By the way, I remind young Master Ashton here that debts should be repaid. Don't disgrace Uncle Ashton. Everyone in the hall was shocked. In the eyes of everyone, Ashton fled in defeat. I was just about to chase him when I was stopped by his father and asked me how much money he owed. I made a 8 gesture. 86,371 yuan and 20 cents. But before I could finish speaking, I saw him scolding the naughty boy while writing a check for 8 million yuan. Wait a minute. I quickly stopped him. 80,000. If you want to round it up, you can give me 90,000. 80,000? His expression was even uglier than before. He borrowed for 80,000? This is deliberately causing trouble. Alas, after recovering the debt, I thanked Lilith and walked back in high spirits. On the way, I blocked all of Ashton's contact information. As soon as this matter was settled, I went to find Penelope without stopping. I told her that I had listened to her suggestion and thought about it for a long time after I went back. I felt that in recent years, I was so eager to pay off debts that I would do any job as long as I could earn money. I really neglected my long-term development. The company wants to expand the market in City A. I have applied to go to the branch company. Take this opportunity to temper myself. Penelope was happy for me. Before I left, she packed a lot of food and supplies for me to take. On the third day after I arrived in City A, Penelope suddenly contacted me. That Ashton came to look for you and asked a lot about your work here. There's nothing special. It's just things like how long you've been working part-time, how many night shifts you've had, and how much salary you've got. He knew these things before, but for some reason he started crying. It's very scary. You didn't tell him where I am, right? Of course not. Sis is not stupid. Penelope didn't tell him, but he still found me. Downstairs of the company, he was haggard and thin and could hardly stand steadily. See, true feelings are ultimately different from stereotyped acting. Family members being sick, being fired by the company, being in dire straits and poverty-stricken. He has acted out many reactions in difficult situations. But the despair in front of me is already vividly portrayed without a single action or a single line. Serafina. Serafina. There was a blood scab on his chapped lips. The moment he saw me, his dim eyes suddenly shone brightly. He grabbed my arm. I could feel his hands trembling weakly. He was pulling me with almost all his strength. I didn't break free. I led him to the shade of a tree. What can I do for you? Seeing that I didn't struggle or leave, he seemed rather at a loss. It seemed that there were 1,000 words stuck in his chest. Then let me guess, I lowered my head. After much investigation, you have confirmed that I am really just a poor person without parents. The small misunderstanding at the beginning has turned into a huge mistake in 5 years. Your world has collapsed. You thought that the rich young lady you were playing games with was actually a poor person living a serious life. How do you feel? Disappointed? Regretful? Resentful? Self-blaming? Let's start over. Forget those unpleasant things and let me make it up to you properly, okay? His eyes were full of pleading. Forget those unpleasant things, I smiled. Just like a game not played well and forgotten after a sleep. Is that so? Ashton. Since you have investigated, you should also know how I begged people everywhere and even knelt down to others when you said your mother was sick, just to get a few thousand more yuan. At that time, I was thinking that my parents were gone. I deeply knew that this trauma would be difficult to heal in a lifetime. I didn't want you to experience such great pain, so I did my best to raise money for you. In the end, what did you do with the money I gave you? Did you spend it on buying clothes or drinking? His lips quivered, and he had nothing to say in reply. Oh, and also, for the bracelet you gave me, I didn't see its value, and I didn't have the intention to study it. I only know that it is a solemn and precious gift, so I want to give you the best gift within my ability. You can't borrow money to buy a gift. So I have to find a way to earn some extra money. You're right. More than 1,000 yuan. How could I take it out overnight? So, it took me more than half a month. Tears welled up in his eyes and flowed down along the dried tear stains. He stroked my elbow. Don't say any more, don't say any more. I knew that he had also seen the video. During that time, I had almost no time of my own except for work and part-time jobs. So every night, after he fell asleep, I would quietly get out of bed and take my phone to an open space downstairs. I didn't have the opportunity to learn any talents. Only my singing was passable. So I opened a live broadcast and sang some soft and low songs. Even so, within 2 days, I was still accused of disturbing the peace by a drunk big brother passing by. He swung a wine bottle over. I stretched out my arm to protect my head. My elbow was hit and immediately swelled up. Later, when Ashton found out, I lied that I accidentally bumped into the wall while playing with my colleagues. Now that I think about it, you also told me many lies. Just like you clearly rubbed your hands while playing rock climbing but said it was from working. By the way, when you said you went out to borrow money and got beaten up, how did you get all those injuries? He didn't dare to look at me. Drag racing. I nodded. So that's it. Later, when I saw someone doing a silent live broadcast, I followed the same method. I set up my phone aside. When someone sent a gift, I would complete the corresponding instruction. For example, run 50 meters back and forth. For example, do 20 squats. For example, do a handstand for 1 minute. As long as the cheapest gift is sent, one can command a person. I can only earn $1 or so for completing an instruction, but there are an endless stream of viewers who are willing to give it a try. This attempt is also considered a success. I bowed frequently to express my gratitude and then seriously completed the instructions, from 2 to 4 in the morning, under the bleak moonlight. I was sweating profusely but always faced the camera with a smile. One day, when I came back, I was so tired and dizzy that I directly fell asleep on the bed. As a result, you shook me awake and said I smelled bad and insisted that I take a bath. It was really annoying. My tone was relaxed, as if telling an ordinary and interesting story. He clutched his chest and slowly bent down, as if having a spasm somewhere. He was in so much pain that he couldn't straighten up. I had to support him. Looking down, I saw big drops of tears falling on the ground. 17. I waited quietly for a few minutes and then said, when we were together, did you ever really cry? He didn't understand. I explained, for example, when Chunbao passed away, I was heartbroken. You also cried so hard. Were you really crying? Or were you feeling pleased because you had succeeded in taking revenge for the matter of mother being sick? He shook his head desperately and wanted to say something. I continued, that time when I had an attack of appendicitis in the middle of the night, I hesitated about the surgical cost. I was also afraid that it wouldn't be good to ask for leave just after starting work. So after thinking about it, I still chose conservative treatment. I had intravenous drips for a week. Half a year later, when it occurred again, I had to have an operation. How much more suffering did I endure? When you cried and blamed yourself in front of the hospital bed, were you really crying? Did you laugh at me in your heart and think that I was too deep into the act and deserved to suffer? Right? No, no, Serafina, he grabbed my hands, tears and snot flowing. I want to dig out my true heart and show it to you. The second time I saw you, you were distributing flyers on the road. I thought, is this a young lady experiencing life? I approached you just out of curiosity. When I found that you had given yourself a poor person's persona, I was greatly inspired. I have suspected everyone who has been nice to me since I was young and thought they had ulterior motives. They only liked me because of money. So I learned from you and pretended to be a poor person too. I thought it was so interesting. I admit that many times, there was an element of competing with you. I wanted to see to what extent you would admit defeat. But in the process of getting along with you, I really fell in love with you. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, groggy, I feel that we are just an ordinary and happy little couple living in a rental house. Such a life is not impossible either. The more I love you, the angrier I am about your precautions and tests. I just want to see you be moved by me and waver a little. As long as you take a step back, I can confess a little more and give you everything. I shrugged. But from beginning to end, it was all your own game. Yes, he looked up. The spots of light from the leaves fell on his face. I am grateful for that misunderstanding that led to our meeting. I only hate myself. You should hate. I won't persuade you anymore. Go back early and go home and hate properly. I patted his arm and was about to leave. He pulled me back in reverse, his eyes red. Regarding Isabella, don't you want to ask something? I thought for a while. Is her little dog better? Huh? Ah, it should be better. That's good. Oh, wait, he didn't let go. Our two families have had an engagement for a long time. But we haven't officially dated. When I was with you, I did give her things and accompany her to go out and play. That's because I thought you were rich but only willing to buy me those cheap goods. And she has always been generous to me. I was holding a grudge in my heart, so, that's enough. No need to explain. Don't worry. I won't expose your scandal and reveal that you are two-timing. You can be at ease and be your successor. People will laugh when they are extremely speechless. His smile is so ugly. Serafina, you said you loved me. I love you too. Can't you give me another chance? Yes, because of poverty and misunderstanding, you have experienced a lot of pain. I have also experienced a lot of psychological torture. However, there are still so many happy moments. They are not fake. Those were the years when I felt the most truly happy in my life. Are you really saying that you don't want them just like that? I pried off his hands that were holding me one by one. I said word by word, for me at that time, those days with you were indeed the starlight of my life. He looked delighted and hurriedly nodded. For me too. I interrupted him. But in fact, those shining stars that made me obsessed were just glass marbles that you threw in the dirt to play with. He was stunned, and thousands of emotions flashed in his eyes. So, for me now, those memories are just dirty glass marbles. In the days that followed, I was busy with work. But no matter how late I worked overtime, he was always downstairs. Sometimes he held a bouquet of flowers. Serafina, you used to regret that the balcony had to be used for cooking and there was no place to grow flowers. You said that when we moved to a bigger house in the future, we must grow more, the kind that are red and purple, gaudy and enthusiastic. Before you move to a big house with me, I'll bring you the flowers first. Sometimes it was an expensive set of jewelry. Serafina, I just bought this at an auction. When we watched TV before, when the heroine put on this gemstone, you exclaimed and said that even if it was fake, you wouldn't dare to buy such a big one. This is real. It suits you. Sometimes it is a concert ticket. Serafina, don't you like his songs the most? Last time he held a concert, you dragged me and listened outside the stadium all night. This is in the front row of the infield. If you want, I can also arrange for you to go backstage to meet him. I didn't accept any of his gifts, but every time I would listen to him finish speaking and then walk away. 2 months later, when I nodded again after listening and was about to leave, he stopped me. I promised not to pester you. These days, I have also expressed my attitude. Serafina, I just want to ask, how much have I progressed on the progress bar? Progress bar? I blinked in confusion. There is no progress bar. Don't you like acting? I thought you weren't satisfied after 5 years and changed to a new script to continue. Don't say angry words. Give me a direction. If you like the previous small life, I can give the inheritance to my younger brother and we can build a warm little nest. If you like a rich life, come back with me and I will do my best to satisfy you. Whether I am poor or rich, I can do it for you. The clouds are floating, and a few stars are flickering in the sky. I remember a sentence said by Sanmao. I said, if you don't like it, you won't marry a multimillionaire. If you like it, you will marry a billionaire. I don't regret having loved you. But if your focus is still on being poor or rich now, I doubt, do you really understand me? The next day, Ashton didn't appear. He didn't come for the next half month. Just when I thought everything had been made clear and I would go my own way and he could do whatever he wanted in the future. Arya came to me. Serafina, if you still have a heart, go and see Ashton. He broke off his engagement, quarreled with his family, and fell seriously ill. Now he is neither human nor ghost. In the past, he was stubborn. When I asked, he would just say that it was just a game with you. But even a fool can see that you have been in his heart for a long time. At first, I was also waiting to watch the excitement. I thought that one day, when you broke up with him because you disliked him for being poor, he would gracefully reveal his identity as a rich second generation. Or, when you finally announced that he had passed your test, he would also reveal his identity at the same time and say that you had not passed. Just thinking about it is so exciting. Don't look at me with that kind of look. Well, I admit that we might have ruined our brains by reading cool novels at the beginning. But later he was deeply involved. In the inexplicable contest, he can't do without you. You should also understand him. He grew up in that environment since childhood and doesn't believe in true feelings. You let him see it but then take it away. It's too cruel. As you said, he has true feelings for me. Does he really love me? I asked. Or, when you finally announced that he had passed your test, he would also Then I only have one question. If he loves me, then even if I am pretending, in that so-called game contest, what if he admits defeat first? When I love someone, I can't bear to see him suffer at all. If I have the ability, what does winning or losing matter? I just want him to be well. I once loved him like that, Arya stammered. I turned to the phone in his hand and said, starting from the wrong starting point, we could have also taken the right path. Now the stars are falling and it is filthy and detestable. It's all your fault, Ashton. How do you know? Arya glanced at the screen awkwardly and hurriedly asked as she looked at my departing back. I didn't look back, because I have given my heart, so I understand him a little better. 3 years later, I returned to Cheeching to attend Lilith's wedding. She said that later Ashton's condition got worse and worse. He tried to commit suicide but was saved by his family and sent to a nursing home. He can be considered as being abandoned. His younger brother has now officially taken over the company. Do you want to go and see? She asked. No, I took out the project materials to be cooperated with Serafina Group and handed them to her. I want to be the protagonist of my own life. I don't have time to be an audience for him anymore.